Wow. Good middle of the day. I was going to say good morning, but it's the middle of the day. And thank you, Rebecca, for being on the call with me. So, this is the beginning of what I hope is many more joyful experiments in how we can use tarot to converse with our creative projects. So, I'm just loosely framing it right now as a practical applications of tarot Zoom series, hosted by yours truly, poet and tarot muse, two of my favorite things. And you can find me on Hearts Compass Tarot on Instagram if you haven't already found me there. I love to play there. So, what I did today was reach out to, well, one of our subscribers, Lisa Rizzo, reached out to me and said, "What about tarot for writers?" So, Lisa is the author of a poetry collection called Always a Blue House, and she has a memoir in process called A Poet, Her Father, and the Silence Between Them. So she had agreed to let us use the tarot and apply it to her process. So because it's the first time, I'm just going to kind of walk through this idea that if you haven't already picked out a tarot deck for to use with your writing process or creative project, you may actually find one that's thematically connected to your writing. Like if you're writing about the 60s, there's a counterculture tarot deck. Maybe looking at animals, there's an animal guides deck. Sherlock Holmes, if you're writing mystery or whodunits. There's the beautiful Wee Moon deck, which was made by a whole bunch of different women artists. Druidcraft. And I just grabbed these from my own tarot library. You may have your own, or there's just so many ways you can play. But if you're writing about a particular era, it might just be fun to go say, oh gosh, is there a tarot deck, even tangentially connected to that era? But I do kind of, if you haven't ever used the tarot before and you're just starting, the Rider-Waite-Smith, the magician with the red cloak and the yellow background, is a very good basic beginning deck just because there are picture stories on all of the cards. You know, sometimes you'll encounter a deck that has 8 cups on there for the 8 of cups. But in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, there's a figure turning away from some cups and continuing on with their journey. And it's much easier to connect to the visual story, at first anyway, I believe. So, Rebecca, I know you already have some decks, so you probably have some out today, and you're welcome to write to yours when we get to the writing portion. So today's layout was again inspired by Lisa saying, how can writers use the tarot? Um, so for today's layout, you are welcome to point the arrow in any direction, honestly. If you have a poem or a short story or a collection, and it could either be a work in process, or maybe you finished a book and you want to celebrate it and kind of converse back over it. Take a moment and just look at what you did coming through that project. So hopefully you have something in mind. Do you know today, Rebecca, what you're going to write to?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So actually this morning when I received the email about this call, I was completing a chapter or a scene that I'm writing as part of a ghostwriting project. So the email spread that you shared there really spoke to what I was going through with that project. So I might continue to write with that, but I'm kind of here showing up to this call as an infant, really open to whatever comes in the moment. So we'll see.
Beautiful. Okay, I love that. So yeah, that's a beautiful application too if you're ghost writing something or so it's just endless ways we can play. And these are just invitations for a very simple 3 card layout, and I'll walk us through it. But I was thinking really about how when we finish something or we're still trying to finish a project, card 1 could reveal the past self, like the anchor, the self that created that work, or even the self that's speaking in the work, or even a look at what part of the experience it's addressing. But it's kind of looking at that past self. And then card 2, I was inviting us to look at it as what's the lesson or the healing communicated about or by the work, or even to you personally as the creator of the work. card 3 then reveals sort of this bridge or promise into the present, what the current self is building in the present out of the energy of that work. So you could think of it as like a promise for the future going forward, or even a next step if you're still trying to finish the work. So these are just invitations. And of course, as we know, each card has so much imagery on it. It's really okay to just see what happens. So I walked through this process with Lisa, and what I did was invite her to pull from the deck that she was using, and she was using Tarot of the Mystical Moments by Catrin Welz-Stein. So I'm going to walk us through an example in relation to Lisa's work, and then I'll give us a chance to do some writing together today based on your project. So we dropped in and did a Heart's Compass moment where we got quiet and connected with our heart, and Lisa pulled one card for each position. Past anchor for her was the Four of Pentacles. The lesson in healing was the Queen of Swords in this deck. And then the Fool was the bridge or promise. So Lisa was kind enough to actually share with me her writing. So I'll just do my best to read from it. And we took, I think, roughly 7 minutes to do this writing. So in response to the card 1, the past anchor herself, about her memoir about her father and this sort of orphaned feeling that she had in relation to their relationship throughout their lives together. Four of Discs, Pentacles. This image shows a woman locked behind a fence. She is properly dressed in a way I've never been, but in the way I have been taught I should want to be. A proper woman, tightly buttoned up, in a long dress, buttressed by her clothes. She holds in her arms a small house, like a shield, a brick house with 4 windows. Everything about her is about protection, closing herself off, not revealing herself to the world, the way I shield myself from others. Her gaze is indirect, not really looking at someone, but off to the side, afraid of asking for too much, afraid the answer to any question would be no. No to who she is, no to who she wants to be, no to whatever she needs. So she stays locked behind the fence, chained with 4 locks, not taking advantage. So this was powerful in the context of her father being an orphan and how he carried silence into his aspect of fatherhood with her. And so she saw that, her protecting herself in that house and in that situation. So that gave her something to explore. Then the second card here, which speaks to the healing or the message that came for her out of this work, is the Queen of Swords, which is this image of this woman way up high. Like the first image was so insular and closed and locked off. And then here, blossoming out of the work, is this queen floating on this air balloon. And Lisa loved the idea of the birds coming in and out of the windows, very different from the closed and locked image that we saw in the first one. So I will try to read this too. Here, let's see. Queen of Swords. Oops. Um, Queen of Swords, a woman wearing a skirt of feathers and surrounded by birds sits on a balloon high in the air. She looks off into the distant, bringing into focus what is far away. This is what I've tried to do while writing about my relationship with Dad. Bring him in close, scrutinize what we were and were not to each other. I am fascinated that feathers appear here since I am surrounded by feathers I have collected as I journey through the world. What do these feathers mean to me? What potent symbol do I hope to gain by collecting them? I have never thought about this before, and it's something I now need to ponder. but the birds do represent freedom, especially now that I've noticed the balloon has windows in it with birds popping in and out. How funny that someone who is afraid of heights and can imagine sitting high in the sky. How funny that someone who is afraid of heights can imagine sitting high in the sky. The balloon offers possibilities for journeys. So I think that's really beautiful. Like the lesson in the healing perspective is definitely one thing. And then Lisa was delighted. She was showing me the different feather bouquets in her room. So just that synchronous experience of the card, like how could the deck know that she had feathers behind her? Oh. And then the third card was like the promise or next step for her. And she is trying, she had in her process sent the book out to some places and then gotten different feedback. And now she's at the point where she's looking at how to reorder the manuscript, right? Thinking she was done and like, oh, I got to go back in again. So here's her writing about this card. The Fool, another woman holding a bird. No, no, with a bird perched on her finger, and in her other hand a flower. She is walking a path that, unbeknownst to her, is actually the tail of an alligator who waits for her with open jaws. Her journey looks peaceful and serene. She's surrounded by flowers and green grass. But at the end, those snapping jaws. Even so, she walks with the faith that what she encounters won't destroy her. This card is always one I like to get because it reminds me that all writing requires a leap of faith, that journey down a path without knowing how it will end. This card tells me to keep going, have faith in myself. I will find the right words. It is only by having the fool's blind faith that I can express what I need to say. Just really lovely.
Yeah, wow. I just want to say, wow, what a journey. And thank you, Lisa and Tanya. It's amazing. Love it.
It, beautiful. And she did say, oh, it's not like the deck told me what to do. And we laughed because all of us who have a lifelong conversation with the cards know that it's deep, it's gentle. Some days you get the blinding insight, and other days you're like, I don't know. But it invites us to keep being kind and gentle and keep keep on going. And again, to start reordering a manuscript, I couldn't think of a better card to fall than the Fool. So we'll go ahead and do our exercise, Rebecca. Let's just drop in. We'll prepare to write next. So I love to start with this moment. Hands over the heart, feet on the floor. Close our eyes and just let the warmth from your hands come up into your body and heart. We'll come down out of our heads, and I'll call us back in just a moment. Hey. So, Rebecca, you have your own deck. I just pulled this in case there was someone on the call who didn't have a deck of their own. So please feel free to pull your own cards. And if anyone's watching this later, please feel free to write to these three cards if you don't have your own deck. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So do you want the longer description, Rebecca, or do you feel like this is good enough? The past self lesson and the promise.
I don't mind having the longer description.
Okay. I let me go back to that slide. I meant to repost it down lower, but here is here is the full description. And
Thank you.
how about if we do 7 minutes of writing and then come up and share what you got, and then we'll dive back in.
Sounds
So,
good.
okay, perfect. I'll call us back in 7 minutes, Rebecca. Becca, how is that? I'm going to bring us back so I can maybe see your tarot card a little better. Did you pull cards of your own?
I
And which?
did, and this was a fascinating journey, so thank you. Going to some new realms. So the first one, this Two of Swords. So I'm working with the Celtic Tarot deck, Kristoffer Hughes and Chris Down. This is my deck.
Oh, beautiful.
And I guess it's branches of the Celtic Tarot. And so that was the first card, which is the past self. So a woman sits alone on a throne of stone in a desolate landscape. She wears blindfold. She holds two swords to protect herself while she shuts out the outside world to journey within. Yes, that is my past self and comfort zone. And then I have the High Priestess. And this is the lesson, the healing, which brought me a sense of comfort to my heart. She's tossing powerful herbs into the cauldron. She's confident, casting spells under a crescent moon, clutching her grimoire and chanting sacred incantations. Her companions are the wind and the trees. And then the bridge and the promise puzzled me a bit because it's this five of cauldrons, four of cauldrons. I'm sorry, four of cauldrons. And you see this man with he's a lonely man or all alone, sitting with his back up against a stone cliff. And there's sacred symbols behind him, but his arms are crossed over his chest, like he's closing his heart or closing, shutting down. So that's the promise. So I'm working with it. I love it.
Okay.
I love this
Okay.
journey.
Okay. Um, did you want to write to each one singularly a little bit or read anything that you wrote from the first card, Rebecca? I know it wasn't
So that's pretty much what I wrote, what I just said to you
that's what you just
about,
said. Yeah.
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 But yeah, I wanted to write more, of course. I mean, 7 minutes was a great amount of time for our purposes here, but um, yeah, I really liked this. Even though the cards I pulled were a little like, I don't know, a little scary to me, except for the High Priestess. She felt like, okay, that's a nice card that I can feel good about. But the other two felt a little, so I feel like I'm going into this space of myself that's like the shadow or what I need to uncover and get through. Yeah, I appreciated it. And yeah, I'll probably write to them some more.
Okay. So in terms of the project that you're working on, or were you putting it towards the one you mentioned earlier a little bit?
Well, so the ghostwriting project, when I saw your email, I kind of reflected on that project with the ones that Lisa had drawn. So that seemed to speak to that
Okay,
project.
good.
And then earlier in our call, when you mentioned the leadership piece that I'm
Yes.
diving into now, that's kind of what came to mind when I started doing this draw. So it
Yeah.
makes sense and it's interesting. And so I think I want to work with more writing about what's going on with me in this role.
Yeah.
And I haven't really sat down to write much down because I'm just active in the role. So I do want to set aside time and write, and then I'll have more to, yeah, I can use these
Yeah.
cards as the springboard for writing.
Beautiful. Yeah. Um, and I'm thinking about the sort of like the opportunity in each of those cards, right? The Two of Swords with the figure, and there's the waters behind. And sometimes we have to not pay attention to the waters, right? To not be overcome by the emotions. And so then it's just feeling into which story of the card is speaking to what's happening. And I love that you said you felt this comfort or healing in the High Priestess. And the Four of Cups, of course, it's that sort of um, Do I want the cup that's being offered? The figure is like, do I want that cup? I'm not sure. Oh, but look at, there's all these other ones. And then fours, the other way to play with all of these that we talk about sometimes is taking the number and looking at the major. So
Mm.
the lessons of the emperor coming through the emotions and how we deal with emotions, or how an emperor and community might have to deal with the heart, which cup to be offered or not. So that just can be a fun other way. If there's something in the card that comes up where it's like, oh, we have a strong reaction to it, sometimes then I like to go to the major and think about, oh, how is the major translating itself through the minors? So the same would be true of the Two of Swords is the High Priestess. That's how she operates in the world, with that balance, um, in some sense, that the mental aspect of her anyway. So I just wanted to offer that as another road into the cards.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, that's so useful. It's such a great way for me to get to the heart and soul of what I want to write about and my journey with this leadership role. Because I could sit there and write all the little dynamics and everybody's little but, and I would never get to what I really want to write about. So I think these cards will help me find what I really want to write about.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they're like a homing beacon, like come home to you and what matters to you, beautiful you.
Yeah, it's really quite powerful. And
Yeah.
right on.
Okay. So is your cup full with writing today, Rebecca?
I do feel complete. I feel this was
Okay.
amazing.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to just share one more thing, because I also put in a few slides in here just about other ways for to play. So I hope that this is useful. And thank you, Lisa, for your example. And again, if anybody who's looking at this later, feel free to use this layout. And this is the Radiant Tarot deck with the Ten of Wands, Ten of Cups, and Knight of Swords. So then you could just look up deck maker interpretations for these cards if you wanted insight. I'm going to teach a couple fun classes, Rebecca, coming up. I'm going to do a pre-Mother's Day tarot and writing art workshop where you can make your Mother's Day card, or you know what, you can just make it for yourself, because sometimes we need make our own cards. We love our children, and sometimes we just need to acknowledge ourselves. And a pre-Father's one day. So I was joking around. If you're tired of giving soap and socks to dad, make him a tarot card. And then if you're in Sonoma County, I'm going to do third Thursdays in Duncan's Mills at the Candle Shop again, which is delightful. And I'm sure I'm going to find a venue here locally. So I'll be kind of coming out of the tarot closet with my readings, which is really fun, even though I consider myself a writer and a poet first. So that is pretty much it. And I am so grateful that you logged on today, Rebecca. I really appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll talk about next month, having you as our featured layout person.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much, Tanya and Lisa. This was a really generous offering, and I appreciate it so much.
Tarot blessings, Rebecca.
Thank you. Same to you.